to understand Russia is not an easy thing to do. And you really cannot understand Russia until you recognize that. So I'm just going to try to give you a little bit of the background.
Yeah.
The when the church was formed, the Christian church under the name Christos, it was formed in Constantinople by Constantine, the Council of Nicaea, 325 AD. And this church developed 7 Constantinian councils to run the church. And these 7 were governing all of Christianity. And Rome was brought in under this tenure because at that time, Constantinople was the capital of the entire empire.
Right.
But Rome began to pull away immediately because Rome began to assert itself as, we're more important than Constantinople. And so, but when you look at the authorship of the New Testament was written in Greek at the command of Constantine, who demanded 50 copies in Greek from Eusebius around 385 AD. Now, Eusebius would also craft the Codex Vaticanus in Latin for the Roman Church, but primarily the scripture was written in Greek. Mm-hmm. And so this was the foundation of the New Testament, and the aspect of what we call the eastern part of the Roman Empire was Greek speaking. They were not Latin speaking. And so the language was based on Cyrillic, not on the Arabic lettering that we see in the West. And interestingly enough, the Cyrillic of the Greek Cyrillic was a derivative of Paleo-Hebrew, and the Paleo-Ivrit as expressed in both the Etruscan alphabet and in the Colburn alphabet in the British Isles. These were the 2 places that were using that alphabet continuously for all these years. And the Greek Cyrillic would derive from the Paleo, what the Paleo Aleph, and how that becomes the Greek Alpha, right?
Oh.
Or Paleo Beta becomes the Greek Beta, and so on. And so this Cyrillic alphabet is the language of the New Testament. Now, the Byzantine Empire, there would be a split between the Western Empire and the Eastern Empire, and it was mostly under Constantine's grandson who caused the split as he began to loot the Western Empire for purposes of the Eastern Empire. This is what was going on. This is the unknown story, but this is what was happening. And the West was really quite infuriated about it. One of the people who would take up the banner of Western Rome to try to hold the empire together was the first King Arthur, who would fight on the continent of Europe to hold the Roman Empire together in around 390 AD. But he would be killed in battle in Germany, and ultimately Western Rome would collapse. It could not hold on to its politics. Eastern Rome, on the other hand, would continue until 1453. 1453. So you see that, and it would become known as Byzantium, or the Byzantine Empire. And the Byzantine Empire, when it was at its height, controlled all of North Africa and controlled all of the Levant, controlled all of the Balkans, and had a reach up into Austria, and and controlled all of the Turkish Anatolian Peninsula, and so forth. But the encroaching agent was the Ottomans, namely Muhammad. He was not the only encroaching agent, however, because the Mongols would sweep across all of Russia, and they would sweep all the way into Central Europe. And they were imposing at the edges of Byzantium in the Anatolian Peninsula and against the Ottomans as well. The Ottomans could not withstand the Mongols. The only thing that prevented the Mongols from taking all of Europe was that the great Khan had died, and they all had to travel all the way back for his funeral. And when they got back there, they decided, it's too far to go. We're not going to take all the troops out there again. We're just not going. So the Mongolian Empire the empire of the Khan began to wane because they wouldn't take care of it. And so in the meantime, the Ottomans began to rise. And as the Ottomans began to rise, which this happened about in the 1200s, the Ottomans began to push at the gates of Byzantium, and they would be pushing and eating away the Byzantine Empire, primarily in the Levant. Remember that Muhammad started in Saudi Arabia, right? Mecca and Medina.
Right.
And so the Ottomans would rise. They would take Jerusalem. And this caused the Crusades, where Europeans would come back there and try to take Jerusalem back from the Ottomans. The Ottomans would take it back from the Crusaders. Crusaders would take it back. But ultimately, it came down to a confrontation between the Ottomans and what was left of Constantinople, which was really all that was left of the Byzantine Empire in 1453. And Constantinople was a very defensible city. They proved it.
Right.
And so the last king of Constantinople, of the Byzantine Empire, he had a daughter, and her name was Zoe Paleolog. Zoe Paleolog. And when the empire fell in 1453, and the only thing protecting it was an Italian mercenary who was an absolutely brilliant tactician, and he was really handing it to the Ottomans. But then there came a day when there was a huge volcanic explosion in Indonesia, and it had covered the earth with ash. And so the people in Constantinople woke up to this reddish purplish sky, and it was a weird, they were seeing a weird sky and a weird heaven. Anyway, it freaked them out. And in that day, they capitulated to the Ottomans, and the Ottomans took Constantinople. Well, Zoe Paleolog was sent off to Rome. And in Rome, the Latins had told her, look, we want to rein in these rogue Byzantines, these Byzantines that are up there in Mother Russia.
Mm-hmm.
So they sent Zoe Paleolog into Moscow. Actually, it wasn't Moscow at the time. It was the city of Vladimir, is what it was called. And Vladimir was the capital. This is where a wooden Kremlin had been built. And we want you to go marry Ivan III and convert him to Roman Catholicism. Well, she got there, and the Russians were like, what's that Roman cross doing here? We're not going to tolerate it. Get it out of here. And Ivan III told her, oh, you're going to come here and be my wife? Okay, you can be my wife. Learn to speak Russian and convert to Orthodoxy. And her having a background in Orthodoxy, being a Byzantine princess, it was like, done. And so she becomes the wife of the Tsar, the Tsarina, and she converts to Orthodoxy. And this would tie the Byzantine Empire directly into the Russian Empire. So the Russians then claimed, the Tsars began to claim, we are the true heirs of Byzantium. We are the true heirs of Byzantium.